What's up, everybody? And welcome to the Cause Correct podcast with me, Rispa Wanjanjage. This is the sixth episode of our podcast, and today we are talking about why you should leave the house at least once a day. I know, quite interesting, and maybe you are curious. I really do hope you are curious. But that's it. Once again, welcome. If it's your very first time here, we believe that no one is too messed up to be redeemed. Like, no one is too far gone to come back to the fold and maybe start walking a journey that they are proud of. No one has sinned too much that they cannot be forgiven. No one has wasted too many opportunities that they could never be given another opportunity, or they could never be deserving of another opportunity. Here, we believe that there is no challenge in heaven or on earth. There's no human or principality or anything that stands in the way of your redemption. And here we even go a step ahead and say that you don't even have to be choosing to cause correct today. Part of what we are doing here is to bring an awareness to you that you can embrace the idea that you can cause correct. But anyway, before I get too emotional, because cause correction is very personal for me, I would like to dive into the topic of the day. Sorry about that. And I would like to clarify that this is almost a build up on the conversation that we've been having in the past two episodes, which is around the power of stories and the power of the stories that we tell ourselves, particularly. So, why leave the house at least once a day, and why did I come up with this idea? Or rather thought. So first and foremost, I think I've always wanted to talk about why you should leave the house at least once a day. But perhaps it's a good thing I've not written about it or talked about it anywhere before until this moment in time, because I think I would have been giving very hypocritical advice whereby I tell people you should leave the house at least once a day, and yet I myself wasn't doing that. Now, once again, you need to know that cause correct is very, very central to mental well-being. And for me, mental well-being is actually the state of your soul. It's the state of your spirit. It's the state of your emotions, okay? So now coming back to the idea that we should leave the house at least once a day, I'm going to be sharing a few stories here and there, but I think one of the key times that inspired the thought of either an article or a podcast around this topic was when I had recovered just a bit from the depression I experienced in the years 2017 December to 2018. And one of the ways, I must confess, I have been copying all my life with problems and with things has always been through avoidance. And my avoidance has looked something like ghosting. And by ghosting, I mean serious ghosting, whereby I do not talk to anyone, I do not interact with anyone, I do not show up for meetings, I do not even say where I am. Like, it's been crazy, but I am honestly just grateful to God that I'm getting better at it. Let me be the first one to also confess in this podcast, please. Because correction is not for people who figured it out. So if you figured it out and you feel like, oh, y'all have too many problems, I mean, please feel free to leave a like. Or to at least share this with someone who needs it, and maybe feel free to come back any day, anytime when you want to understand how people on the other side of your perfect life look like. Let me be the first one to confess that it's not even like I've stopped fully 100% copying like that, where you just ghost everything and everyone. But I think I've said many times that cause correct is not for someone who's figured it out. I'm not sharing any of the information or the content that I'm sharing on this platform because I've figured it all out. But part of why I am doing it when I'm also still in the journey of trying to get better and even taking my own advice is because I feel that it is very unfair. And I am convinced that it is very unfair when we are told by society and by the world that we can only tell our stories when we are on the other side of overcoming. I'm always curious, what does someone who's on the other side of overcoming truly look like? I don't know that anyone will ever 100% overcome every single thing they need to overcome so that they can start reporting as who they are. So here's my whole heart to you guys. I am in the process of course correction. Part of what I am course correcting is even how I cope. So, anyway, I was saying why you should leave the house at least once a day. I used to cope. So, when I was very depressed, I would stay in bed maybe for even 2 days without moving, without going to pee, without nothing. But why that was possible is because I would also cope like this. I'm in bed for like 2 days continually, where I've also not eaten anything. I've not called anyone or talked to anyone. Maybe all I've done is numb myself through movies. And then, there's a way you watch movies and you fall asleep. When you wake up, you don't want to think, so get back to it again. And then you fall asleep and get back to it again. Then I would find myself in cycles where maybe I've done this 2 days. You walk out maybe for 30 minutes to get food, or those days I would take only candy, like just to have enough sugar to get my body running. And then you even like get back to bed again. I have to confess to you guys, there's a time I stayed indoors for like a full 3 weeks when I had not really interacted with any human being. And and out of that experience, I have to say that it made sense to me. And I honestly wouldn't go back and judge myself. I like to think of myself in those stages as a girl who was in quite a state. I cannot judge that girl. And if you're someone who's done that, I want to encourage you today or to pray for you if you're not able to do it. That may God give you the courage, the strength, and the love and self compassion to not judge yourself for anything you have done in the past, where especially that judgment has been done without you observing the context or the circumstances that were happening, that were going on around you when you made those particular choices that you've maybe regretted. As an example, I was copying like this, hiding, but because since I was a child, the first time I knew I had to learn to be quiet and just avoid human beings was actually through my family, and I was 4 years old, because my dad used to come home drunk and we would be very scared of him. Particularly, I was very scared of him because I was maybe like 4 years to 5 years at most there. He's drunk, he's threatening everyone, he's cussing every neighbor, he's calling everyone names. He's about to come call me names, so it's easier. I just avoid him, avoid my mom, avoid everyone, go to bed and pretend to be asleep. Because if I pretend to be asleep, it means then that my father won't come to talk to me, or he won't criticize me, or he won't give me instructions that are incoherent because he's drunk. And I think if you guys have interacted with any person who's drunk, you know that some of them talk and there's no sense in what they're saying. But when you're someone who's younger and it's like your father, they still expect you to understand the instructions they have given. And if you do not act in accordance to what they want, it can easily turn into a whole other situation where maybe there's even name calling, or maybe you could be slapped or beaten up. Like that happens a lot in households where there is drunkenness and there's alcohol. So I want to extend a lot of compassion and a lot of love to people who have been in similar circumstances. But I was saying, here's why we cannot afford to be judging ourselves for things we have done in certain periods of time without examining what was the context of those things. I learned to avoid people when I was 4 years old. I don't know if I am an extrovert today or I am an introvert. I would only qualify myself as an ambivert. An ambivert is someone who is both. But here's the thing though. I think for a very long time in my life, I'm 26, but it's been a long time, yeah. Especially in my teenage years and when I was a kid, from 8, when you're very active, 8 years old, till maybe 14, 15 there, I was very extroverted. And I think I am an extrovert naturally. But now when I got into high school and anxiety and fear and shame and low self-esteem and imposter syndrome and just a lower key level of depression kicked in when I was 13 turning to 14. I started coping with this method of avoiding people, not talking to people, ghosting them, and I did that for a very long time, to the extent that I think it changed my personality, to the extent that one of my mentors in recent years, maybe about 2 years ago, asked me about my personality. I told her that, I think I am extroverted, and she was like, Crispa, are you sure? I think you're an introvert. This particular mentor was someone I knew out of a leadership program that I was doing, and one of the very key tests we would always take when we are getting into this leadership program was take different personality tests so that the program and the content that would be delivered to us would always be tailored toward the personalities that are within the class or the cohort that is going on. Just for the record, I'm talking about a program called Lapid Leaders Africa. This is not because they have paid me or anything, but because honestly, Lapid Leaders Africa is the one leadership program that has transformed my life in so many ways. It's the first place where I got referred to therapy. It's the first place where I met people who had an interest in development in Africa. It's the first place that I met a mentor who was interested in knowledge and also interested in God, and she could combine both. And I must say that it has been very instrumental to who I am. I do have wounds from the program as well, but I think they are wounds that really just took place because of other wounds already in my past that had not been healed. So it felt like it was a place that exposed the wounds, but it's easy to think that the wounds came from that particular place. And maybe this is a good place to state that here is one of the reasons why you should leave the house at least once per day. When I joined Lapid Leaders Africa, it was March of 2018. And I remember when I was coming to join this program, the whole month of January and February of 2018, out of all those 8 weeks, I had probably been outdoors and interacted with real human beings for less than collectively a week. Yes, that is how serious my my history with ghosting has been. And what happened, how I even got exposed to the program was this one day, still when cooped up in the house, I decided to pick up my phone and just look at different people's statuses. And as I was either looking at statuses or one of those mini posters that are forwarded in groups very many times, I saw this poster that was saying, are you lost? Do you feel lost? Do you feel like you do not know where you're going and you would like to find a way to like find direction in your life, then we have just the program for you. Lapid Leaders Africa is organizing leadership programs for young people who want to find who they are and who want to have an impact in their generation and within Africa. And they have an open day. So it's when I went for the open day that I had the CEO talking of, not the CEO of this program, of this leadership program and organization as well. And when I was listening to her, there's just something that connected with my soul that made me feel like, you know what, maybe this is the program that I need to connect to so that I stop feeling dead inside. Maybe in this place, I will find a place that starts to bring me back to life. So that was one of the few days I had left the house, or I had left my hostel, because at the time I was living in a hostel because I was still in campus. It was one of the few days I had left that particular place in so very long. And yes, I'm very serious. I was in campus. And that tells you that if I had left the house very few times and going for this open day was one of those few times, that also tells you in depression, it doesn't matter what responsibilities you have. Most of the times you will do things that are sabotaging your life as you watch it, and you still let it happen. As for me, part of what I sabotaged a lot was my education at the time. Because if I'm not leaving the house, it means I'm missing almost every class, I'm missing almost every lesson. But that is the power of being mentally incapacitated by experiences like depression. So why it's important that you should leave the house at least once a day, whether you are someone who's going through any kind of mental health issues, or you're someone who has a sound mind. And I pray that at some point people will listen to this and they will all have sound minds, and they will only be listening to such a podcast and only relating with it as a scar that they have, and not something that is ongoing, just because I know the pain of such experiences, all right? So anyway, I was saying that I used to cope like this, and I have been coping like this for a very long time, to the extent that even now when I know better, even now when I have gone through leadership programs and I have gone through being mentored by different people at different stages in my life, even when I have started working on my relationship with God, yes, so that I can find the strength to move and to live, accurately and also fully. I can't say that I am out of the woods with dealing with my issues in this way, because at the risk of repeating myself, I said in the previous episode that what happens when we've repeated something for a very, very long time, it's like meditation. So you've been meditating on an idea, on a thought, or a habit that it has almost become second nature to you. So if your coping mechanism has been maybe drugs, or has been hiding, or has been ghosting people, or isolating yourself, or withdrawing from society, you're likely to find that even when you started making progress in your life, you may still be coping in the same ways, not because you don't like yourself or because you don't want to make progress, but because it's the only way you know how to cope. And why you should leave the house at least once a day is so that now you start exposing yourself to people. But I will get to that in a moment. But I was saying that when you have had ways of copying that you've known for very long, even when you started changing, you're likely to still repeat them. And it's not because you are someone who is not serious about their lives or who does not want to make progress in their lives. It's that in the same way you have meditated on habits and coping mechanisms that were not healthy for you, is the same way you now need to start meditating, i.e., to start exercising a new way of handling things, a new way of coping, until it will become normal for you. So one of the things that I did today so that I could have the authority to do this podcast I made sure that I left the house and I went to buy drinking water to refill my drinking water and hugged my neighbor. She's a shopkeeper, like downstairs. Um, and just hugged her and wished her a happy belated Mother's Day, because it's just something different about human interaction that gets us out of our own spaces. And maybe this is a good time now for me to speak very specifically about why you should leave the house at least once a day. What I mean by this, one is, please, physically, unless it's physically impossible, which I doubt, leave the house. Leave the house, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Look at someone, look at a bird, look at a flower, look at, I don't know, ugly scenes. Even if you're in a place you live and there's nothing that is nice to look at, go look at it. Let it remind you that you are angry about living in that place, and let it motivate you to probably figure out how to get out of that place. But just get out of the house. And here is why. Regardless of what human experience or interaction you're going to have, as long as you are outside of the house, it means that your brain will have been stimulated by something. Like, your heart will have been stimulated by something that is different from what you have been thinking about and meditating on when you have been all on your own. It gets you out of your own space in a moment, and that is good for your soul, so that you can start reminding your mind that there are different realities that can be experienced by a human being. When you have left the house, the truth is that I have found in my life that God is also very, very faithful, that He's always ensured, as long as I have left the house, there will always be something that happens somewhere outside that gives me a level of insight on what to do with my life. What I mean by that is, I could have gone out. Maybe it's even you've gone for a church service and you couldn't have cared less about that church service. Maybe you didn't even want to go. But you find that whenever you have gone, even if the pastor or the teacher is preaching on something that you feel does not relate to you, you might find a word within that preaching that does not apply to you, that triggers a conversation within your soul that starts to be a solution for you. I think leaving the house is one of the fulfillments of the idea that no human being is an island, and that we are created to be social beings. Therefore, if we do not interact with other people, there's a way our minds start to believe the world works a certain way, and yet it does not work that way. But remember, principles of life are principles of life. If you're spending time in something somewhere for very long, those things are what starts to become your reality. So let's speak to my, what? How old was I in 2018? I can't remember. Maybe I was 21. Um, let's speak to my 21-year-old person that was depressed and hiding in the house, or rather trying to cope in the house by just hiding and staying in bed and numbing on movies and not talking to anyone or interacting with anyone or asking for help from anyone. In this time, you need to remember, nature abhors a vacuum. So your mind is not blank simply because you are ghosting everyone. The thoughts that will be running through your mind in 3 weeks, and I know people who've done isolation for months and months and months, is that there will now be thoughts running in the back of your mind that now will become like you meditating on them. I found for myself that one of the thoughts that ran in my mind for so long in that period was that I started to believe that maybe I am just a lazy person, or maybe I am just a person who's incapable of handling different, or rather difficult situations and circumstances. I also started telling myself that I am such a failure because just the year before I had done such exploits, if you were to use that word. I had traveled, within Africa and in Europe, I had, gotten really great and amazing opportunities. Then all of a sudden, less than 3 months later, I was so depressed and I'm hiding in the house. So now my imposter syndrome went to a whole other level. It was like in overdrive. It started like taking my mind back to the times when I was in Belgium particularly, and the voices now in my head started saying how much, Rispa, you see how much you were a hypocrite when you were there. You see how much you were an imposter when you were there. You see how much, and you see, because there's no other voice to contradict the thoughts that were going through my mind that time, I started believing it so much, to the extent that honestly today, all I do is ask God to please give me the grace, the wisdom, and the capacity to go back to each one of those moments when I judged myself so harshly and redeem them, hug myself from that age and just tell her, you know what? I know you judged it as something that was messed up, or you judged it as something that was unworthy of who you believed you were. But I want to tell you that you did the best that you could that time, and you don't need to continue carrying judgment against yourself going forward. Why do I need to do that? Because the truth is that my personal and negative meditations that took place in isolation became so true. They became so, so true to me, to the extent that even when I look back, it always feels like the conclusions I made about myself then are the truth about who I am now. That's good. The conclusions I made about myself in states of depression, in states of isolation, in states of withdrawing from people, in states of not interacting with anyone, became like actual truths. But now, coming back to what I am saying, why you should leave the house at least once a day, what really I want and I intend to mean is why you should interact, have at least, if nothing else, one interaction with a human being, an actual human being, in like physical contact, at least once a day, is so that it can break your mind out of the momentum of whatever is going on in isolation. This is an encouragement, and it's not like this is made specifically only for people who are struggling with mental health issues. This also works for someone who maybe struggled with it and they are a bit out of the woods, maybe not completely, but they are doing better now. I think this is information that can help you to see, oh, maybe I wasn't really terrible at coping. And it's not that I always wanted to be telling myself very negative things, but the way I coped then by isolating and withdrawing myself from people made it so hard for me to have any other alternatives, alternative truths known to me. Mm. I don't know if that has made sense. Let me repeat, or rather try to rephrase it. Like, I'm saying that for someone who may not be in that state as they were, it's not as bad as it was, but yet maybe you still carry judgment against yourself today for how you handled situations back then. I hope that hearing this to some extent can help you extend grace to yourself, the self that was maybe in hiding or in isolation or in withdrawal states, to just tell her, you know what, if you had left the house that time, maybe it could have been better. But now that you didn't leave the house, things weren't very good. And I want to now tell you that the conclusions that you made about yourself in that season of isolation may not have been true, because the only truth you knew at the time was the one you were telling yourself, and yet you were already messed up. What truth can you possibly tell yourself when you are already messed up? Except truths that only seek to fortify the terrible and miserable state that you're already in. Leaving the house is basically a call and an encouragement to every single person that hears the sound of my voice today to please try to interact with someone somewhere. I don't know. Go to a shop. Let someone who has moods and is driving the car literally carelessly causes that car to splash dirty water on you. At least it's going to break your mind out of the trance you are in. I can promise you it would be better for you to have stinking water on your clothes because you are outside of the house than have a completely sterile, clean house, clean clothes, clean everything, and you have a mind that is messed up because it has not interacted with anything that has forced that mind, that soul, that spirit to break out of that, line of thought or line of meditation that's someone may have been carrying through when they were in their own states and in their own cocoon of comfort. If you are going to cause correct, we cannot cause correct by ourselves. And honestly, I must tell you guys, this is hard for me to say because correction has been very, very hard for me. Um, because of first the way I'm used to copying. I became an introvert who almost became very, very withdrawn from people. I'm trying to do better. I'm a bit better, but let me just say, as of the recording of this day, it's not like it's perfect, but I'm okay. I'm okay with the way things are because to me, even doing this, for me, this is now a form of interaction as well with human beings. This is evidence to me that I am doing better. The fact that I left the house today is evidence that I am doing better. Why you need to leave the house is that it also starts to show you that, oh, maybe you're improving. It can be a way of you collecting evidence that you are making deliberate choices to become a better person, not even for anyone else. Please forget trying to be better at it because it is how you serve people. Even the Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I'm not saying this because I'm very perfect in loving myself. No, not yet. But I love the way I love myself right now. It's better than it was in the past. But it's because if you're going to minister to anyone, literally the first person you are ministering to is yourself. So you don't need, and allow me to just maybe go off track a bit and then just encourage you today. Please, if you're a person who's been fed that information of, oh, you can only add value to people, you can only make something out of yourself, out of your life, if you're adding value to other people, it's true. It's a true statement, but I want to tell you that you couldn't possibly add value to anyone if you yourself are messed up. The most you can do is bleed on others if you're walking around with a bleeding soul. So it's okay for you to not have a big platform today. It's okay for you to not be famous today. Now that we are in the 21st century, please let's not lie to each other. Most of us may not confess it, but if you were to confess our vain dreams, we probably want to be rich and famous and known and I don't know, all of those things. But before you could get a platform, you don't need a platform. It is you that needs to be okay. But how will you be okay? One of the ways that you can do that is leave the house. It's like that book that says that why you should make your bed daily. It's about just teaching, it's forcing your brain to start like a string of routines that make you and your brain aware that the day has started. In the same way, now you could tell yourself that I deliberately walk out of my house every day as a way to take care of my mind, and taking a walk every day or getting out of the house every day, even if it's just to stare into nothingness, is one of the ways I am course correcting because I deliberately woke up and experienced, or rather, and exposed myself to external stimuli that forced my heart to at least look at an alternative line of thought, ideas, or feelings that were different from what I was experiencing when I was all alone. You need to leave the house because solutions are found outside. we are created to be interdependent. So even if what you want to do right now is, for example, I could use myself as an example. Let's say you want to go into a line of career that you feel aligns with who you truly are, as an example. The only way you're going to effectively change those careers is if you also have support from people who are in similar um circumstances, situations, or career paths. How will you meet them? Where will you meet them? They need to be outside. They are outside. You could find people on social media, yeah, whatever. But what I mean is that the journey of course correction is not going to be in isolation. So for me, because I don't want, I have decided that it's just better to not force myself to have a million friends when I haven't had those many for quite a substantial amount of time in my life, because I withdrew from a lot of people and a lot of spaces and a lot of communities that used to speak into my life. I've decided that right now I'll just stay true to a few friendships that I know are truly for me, just to start acclimatizing my soul slowly by slowly to getting back into interacting with many human beings. Whatever my future holds, I can only hope that my choices to continually keep leaving the house at least once a day are going to equip me for whatever is coming next. And oh, you may be curious. So, wait, what do you mean you have to leave the house once a day? What if you're working? So, we're in the generation where a lot of people are not working, or rather, a lot of people do get to work from home. So, there's a way you can take that up and just like lock the house as long as you have all your supplies, stay there, binge on Netflix, binge on what? Binge on things, novels, whatever, until kingdom come. It's possible. Sometimes people get into depressive states not because it even initially started as depression, but because they have isolated for too long. Now their souls have become concerned, and their hearts and their minds react by causing them to feel depressed, just as a way to raise an alarm that something is not okay. So my prayer and my hope is that this has made sense for you. What I mean is, I don't know, especially if this is not something that you feel applies to you, because maybe you don't work from home. So either way you have to leave your house daily. What I mean is there's a need for us to leave and have a place where we're interacting with people, with information, with things that force us to get out of the same line of things and thoughts that we have been having for a long time. I would really want to encourage you that if you know someone who is currently in isolation in any way and you don't know how else to reach out to them, please just share this with them. Me, I'll pray so that this will be backed up by power that causes someone to rise up. Depression doesn't always start out being so bad. There's no situation that always starts out being so bad, but they get worse the more we isolate, because shame and fear and every negative thing that works against our soul most of the times thrives in darkness and in isolation. So I hope that this has been a blessing to you. It's the beginning of the week as I record this. So a happy new week to everyone who will listen to it at the beginning of the week. But even if you listen to this in the year 2094, leave the house. It still works. It worked in the past. It's working for me right now. It shall work for you who is in the year 2094 or whatever. Leave the house at least once a day. It is good for your mental health, and it is a great tool of course correction. With that said, leave a like, a comment, or suggestion, whatever tickles your antennae. And may God bless you and keep you, shine his face upon you, and help you to course correct however you need to. I will see you in the next episode where we are going to have a very interesting series around what course correction isn't. All right. All my love, Rispa Wanjanjage. I'm very, very, very happy to always serve you. Bye. Alrighty.